So we are very happy to have Dr. Sulochana Gawande on the Sri Yoga platform. She has a PhD in cancer research from Cancer Research Institute in Mumbai, and the doctoral research was at Tata Memorial Center. That's one of the leading cancer hospitals. And she has, after some time in India, she has in the USA, and she has worked with pharmaceutical companies and done research with universities. And so we are very happy to have her here. And she has written a book both in Marathi and English about cancer, which will be very helpful to anyone that wants to know more about cancer. And so, with this short introduction, Sulutai, go ahead and introduce yourself further, and if you want to talk more about yourself. Thank you.
So, first of all, Shri, thank you very much for inviting me here. And my sincere thanks to all of you who are listening. Namaste. You talked a little bit about my academic or scientific background. I have PhD. I have worked in cancer, worked on cancer research for almost all my career, which is coming up to 40 years because I started even my master's in cancer research. And I have worked both in academia and later in pharma. After coming to United States, I have worked in some very large companies like Eli Lilly and some mid-sized companies. My specialty was, even though I worked across many functions, my specialty was to work on documents that were finally submitted to FDA for getting approval of the drug. And this is a very long process. I explain it in my book so that people will understand how difficult it is to get a medicine for not just cancer, but for any disease. I also went to many countries in Europe, Japan, India, Australia, and conducted workshops to teach oncologists how to analyze data and how to present data. So this is scientific background, but I think I would like you people to know about me as a person. So I grew up in Mumbai, and where I lived, I was surrounded by very low income communities. And I walked to hospital, and as a 19-year-old, I normally skipped and ran and, full of enthusiasm. But the scene at the hospital was very grim. It was the only cancer hospital at that time. Patients were poor, patients were very desperate, helpless. And I think these early memories left a profound effect on me. So all throughout my life, I had this keen desire to help the common man, help people who were not privy to all the education and all the information that we take for granted. So that is one of the main reasons that I decided to write a book that is not a scientific book, but actually it is a book that is for the everyday reader. Shri, can you show the slides that I have sent you?
Yeah, sure.
I can show people actually how it has gone. So the book came out of actually a newspaper column. I started writing in Maharashtra Times in Marathi, and this was a huge undertaking. More than huge, it was a challenging undertaking because I had to convert all the science into Marathi, and not just Marathi, but very simple Marathi that anybody could understand. So my first two articles were about people. I wanted to tell them stories about people with cancer because I had experienced that a lot. And then I started getting emails from everybody saying, Doctor, please tell us about the disease. We want to know about the disease. And that is when I sat down and I made a chronological diagram of how I would tell somebody what cancer is. And in my slides, I'm going to show you, go to the 1, 2, 3, go to the fourth slide. And fourth slide is our prayer, Sarvenaha Sukhinaha Santu. And then from the fifth slide, I want to show you, can I do that, Shri? Can you do
Yeah.
that? Okay, go to the 5th slide, one more. So book starts with the prayer, and if you see here, I start with what exactly is cancer. Most people have that basic question. Cancer and tobacco, the search for carcinogens. Carcinogens are the active agents which cause cancer. Then the next one, I lost it. Okay,
Sorry.
he's going there. That's okay.
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 Next
Then,
one.
then I start with the no, go one back. I start with the history of cancer treatments, but in between, I have put an article, Mother Nature or Lifestyle, and I will tell you why when I talk more. Just wanted to show you this, and I'm not going to explain each one, but here is a drug development process, clinical trials, targeted therapy, immunotherapy. With immunotherapy, we go to the most advanced treatment that's available for cancer today. Shri, can you go to next page, please? Okay. Then I talk about some most common cancers: breast cancer, lung cancer, breast cancer, colorectal cancer, and childhood cancers. This is one, again, I will talk a little bit more. But then cancer is not just a disease of body. People's mind is equally impacted, not just that person, but the whole family. So how to face the diagnosis and how to overcome this challenge. These two chapters try to help people to understand and deal with this calamity that comes in their life. Then, can cancer be cured by miracles? People who were reviewing my book said my tone changed a lot. My usual compassionate tone became very strict because I really want people to look at science, look at cancer scientifically. And then cancer eradication efforts. The decrease in cancer deaths tells you that cancer is not increasing. Actually, deaths due to cancer are decreasing. And then when I was writing all this, I got questions from all over Maharashtra. And the questions were very simple or sometimes very complex. So I compiled them all in I Have a Question. And when you look at this chapter, you will most probably find your question in there because I did get a lot of questions. Then, can you go to the next one, please? Then there, Shri, can you? Yeah. So this is the human face of cancer. So up till the last one, I was clarifying the science. But gold necklace, Matthew's identity, Randy Posh, what will happen me after me, cancer survivors. These are all the people I have met. And these people have courageously faced cancer. And so I put their stories there. Many people wanted me to have more stories. It's not easy. These are somebody's lives. And I'm still in touch with all the people I have written about, not Randy Posh, but other people. And there is this ending. So this is the book, and we can turn off the slide now. I don't need these slides, but I just wanted to give you an idea of what the cancer is. This book is available on Amazon. I tried to bring the price as low as possible. This is my way of giving back to the society. This is not a commercial venture for me. Actually, this is somewhere I'm spending my money. So Kindle version is only $3.99 and paperback is for $9. Amazon wouldn't let me reduce the price below this because they need their profit. But I want people to get this book and read it. If you feel it's worth it after I finish my talk, you can easily get it on Amazon. Now, I heard few people who are in India. So my husband went out of the way to print his book on our own here and take a separate ISBN number. So in India, we have made this book available only for 250 rupees. So we felt $9 was not a good price for Indian people. So in India, this book is available on Amazon or Flipkart only for 250 rupees. So let's put the book behind and let's go to the topic, which is cancer. So what exactly is cancer? You know, there are so many wrong ideas and so many misconceptions, and the misconceptions come because of ignorance. So I want to give you some examples of how much people don't know about cancer. The other day I was coming in Uber And, sometimes Uber drivers are chatty and he said, what do you do? And I said, I work in a company that makes medicines for cancer. He said, no use. All these tourists who come to New York, they bring the germs for cancer. Uh, I have heard that cancer is caused by parasites. I have heard that if you eat brown rice without eating anything, cancer can be completely cured. So there are a lot of wrong ideas about cancer. But above everything else, across all countries, cultures, socioeconomic classes, I see people get very sad and people usually blame their destiny. People feel that it is something, some sin, something wrong that they have done that has brought this disease, horrible disease, onto them. And, and that is something that needs to change. People have to know how cancer develops. People have to understand what causes it. And more than that, people also need to know that they are not so helpless, that cancer is something they can prevent. So, let's go and talk about a little bit about the history of cancer. It's not a new disease. The first mention of cancer is in Egyptian literature almost 3,500 years back. So there's a mention of bone cancer. I think in the Middle Ages also people could easily cancers which grew on the outside of the body, like, on the skin, on the breast, sometimes on the nose, and so on. So these cancers were visible. Now, in the Middle Ages, autopsy was not allowed. So human bodies could not be explored further, even after death. So much information remained hidden. It was only guess based on what one could see outside. But even then, there were very important observations. And some of that was that if this tumor is cut off, if this growth is cut off, it may grow somewhere else. And you can even imagine, can't even imagine today that when there was no germ-free environment, when there was no anesthesia, and when there was no blood transfusion, how hard surgery could be. So Galen, who was a very famous physician for over 1,000 years, he almost said in one place that it is better for the patient to die of the disease than try to remove it. So it was bad. Then 17th, 18th century, this started changing. There was a lot of technological progress. Surgeries became feasible because of all these things that I mentioned. Those causes were removed. So even very deep-seated cancers could be removed. People also knew that if radiation is given, cancers melt. Effect of hormones on various organs was getting discovered. But you have to understand, when all this was happening, people still didn't know why cancer happens. They still felt that cancer is caused by some black bile or a secretion. And I don't want to go much into that because that's not the purpose today. But all this was happening without fully understanding what happens to make this growth come into human body or any body, because some animals also have cancer. And surgeries went on, people tried chemotherapy, but all this was almost like throwing arrows in the dark and hoping that it will hit the correct target. So in 1962, Nobel Prize was awarded to Watson and Crick for finding or discovering the structure of DNA. And after that, science for cancer started moving rapidly. And towards the end of last century, it was very clearly established that cancer happens because there is a mutation. And by mutation, I mean there is a change in the genes of a person's cells. So because my job is to, or my aim is to raise scientific awareness, I don't take anything for granted. I'm going to explain this. So those of you who know that, please don't feel bad. But this is the approach I always take. I just assume people have forgotten the high school biology or their basic structural biology or whatever. So all of us, we have cells, trillions of cells. And 1 trillion probably takes 13 years if we start counting one every second. So we are all made up of cells, starts with one cell really and goes on to make this body. And these cells are controlled by a nucleus, and in the nucleus there are chromosomes, which is DNA, which is deoxyribonucleic acid. So anyway, so there is DNA, and DNA has many small parts on it, which is called genes. These genes are kind of like the control center for everything that happens in our body, which proteins to produce, which things to take away, what to happen. Genes decide all this. And when a gene in a particular cell is mutated, which means damaged, usually there is sufficient defense mechanism that either that damage is repaired or that cell is eliminated, which means killed. What happens in cancer is this damage keeps happening repeatedly. And I'm explaining this to you so that when I later talk about prevention, you will understand why prevention works so well in many cancers. So this is not just one damage, one time. That's not what causes cancer. This is repeated damage where these kind of changes or mutations accumulate over time. And then that one cell escapes the surveillance system. It hides somewhere. And then maybe some time our immunity is down, we are going through some difficult situation, these cells takes advantage of that. It starts dividing, it starts making daughter cells, and these daughter cells form a lump or a growth. Then this growth tricks the other cells and gets a blood supply established to this growth. And once that happens, it is very difficult to go back. Then the body cannot destroy it anymore. So describing this also, I want to point out that it is something like for the normal cell to go from being normal to be a cancerous cell takes a long time. It's a long process with many checks and balances in place. It's not something that, it's again not like infectious disease that you drink polluted water and you get diarrhea. It doesn't happen like that, because these are our own cells which are rebelling and doing something that they are not supposed to do. It's not going to happen very quickly. So there will be then other question, and I'm answering questions that may be coming to your mind, and I will give sufficient time for answering question at the end. So is this always by external factors, these mutations? And the answer is no. There are some mutations which are genetic, which means that the mutation, the genetic defect comes either from the sperm or the ovum, and it comes into the offspring. And you know, some of you might have heard genes like BRCA, BRCA, for which Angelina Jolie had both her breasts removed. So when people are aware of these kind of very strong mutations, so nobody inherits cancer. Please understand this. You only inherit defective genes, which make it more possible for these people to have cancer. There are again now newer thoughts, and this is all still study under progress, work under progress. Some people feel that even if you have strong genes, it still requires some more trigger for those cells to become cancerous. Usually, if a strong body with good, healthy lifestyle may not provide that trigger. Again, because we never know the first cell that started this cancer, many of these questions are still questions even for scientists. And when you read my book, that is something you will notice that I don't give any guarantees. I don't promise anything. If something is not known, I put it in front of you as it is and say, we don't know that. We are still working on it and we will find it out. We are making good progress. But so going back to this, so there are genetic germline mutations, as they are called, which come from hereditary factors. And then there are mutations that happen because of external factors. And those external factors are also called carcinogens, which means cancer-causing agents. So the most known carcinogens are tobacco, number one, radiation. Radiation can be natural or man-made. A small story over here for you. So when Madame Curie found radium, people just went crazy because it was glowing in the dark. And then they started making all these watches which would glow in the dark. Some of you may even remember those watches. So the girls who were painting the dials of these watches would make the brush pointed by using their tongue. They would put the brush on their tongue and they would do it. And after a few years, almost all of them had tongue cancers, because nobody knew that radium could cause cancers. In the beginning, people who were applying radiation, they did not know they had to protect themselves. And many of them had cancer, leukemias or some other cancer. So today, if you go for mammogram or any radiation related procedure, you will see that those people wear a coat, or many times they leave you there and they go out of the room. So as things were happening, people were learning more about these carcinogens. And as I said, so we have asbestos, which causes a very bad lung cancer. There are many chemicals which are capable of causing cancers. Then there are some infections, one called HPV and other one which is hepatitis, a liver infection. They raise the possibility of cancer. Now, more recently, there has been some interesting data. What people are finding that eating large amount of red meat or processed meat can lead to cancer. And then also new phenomenon, which never happened in human history, that we have more food that we need and we eat more food that we need. And obesity and inactive lifestyle has become very common. And that has been strongly associated with incidence of cancer. Now here there is one item I'm going to mention for which I get a lot of pushback, and that is use of alcohol. It has become so fashionable to drink now. I mean, I look at these parties and I have stopped going for parties. Because, for those of you who know Hindi in addition to English, those people who pite nahi hai, pilate nahi hai, they are not very popular. Because alcohol has really become the center of most of the parties. And alcohol is very strongly linked to cancer. And this is not just liver cancer. I'm not talking about just cirrhosis. I'm talking about many, many other cancers that are happening now because of increased use of alcohol. And I'm very, very unhappy to see how much it has gained popularity in the Indian culture, which wasn't so even 20 years back. So I'm going to leave it there. You know, it's for everybody to decide. In my book, I never say you have to do this. I just give facts. I'm a scientist. It's not my job to teach anybody anything. You learn it, you read it, and you learn from it, and you make changes. The American woman who helped me with this book as an editor, actually, when we started, we're going over the data, she stopped drinking. Because this red wine, people have, misled everybody, thinking red wine is almost like amrut from heaven. Anyway, one clarification here before you ask me question is, I'm saying that most cancers take very long to happen. They happen because of wrong habits. They happen because of external agents. So why children? You know, what happens with children? They haven't lived long enough to do something bad. So why do childhood cancers happen? And honestly, we know only about like 10 to 15% cancers of childhood, why they happen. It could be a mistake that happens when the sperm and ovum come together, when the egg is formed. Again, people feel there has to be another trigger to do that. But almost for 85% pediatric cancer, we don't know the reason. The silver lining to this bad situation is many of the childhood cancers are now getting cured, especially the leukemias, but there are still some bad ones. And, again, the good things that have happened is we have special clinical trials for children. Previously, the adult medications were given to children, which was wrong. And I discuss it at length in my book, why it is wrong and what new regulations are in place to avoid that. But so even before you ask me, I want to admit that we do not know what is happening with the children. Okay, so cancer happens. Let's talk a little bit about the treatments, and then Shri, please keep me in check, okay? I can talk about this subject the whole night. We don't want to do that. So
You're fine. Okay.
Okay, so surgery, I already mentioned, surgery still remains a very important treatment, especially for early cancers. Then there is chemotherapy, literally means therapy with chemicals. And so the hallmark of cancer cells is they are able to travel through lymph and blood and go and take root and establish themselves in other organs. You know, a scientist called Paget described it's like, you know, throwing the seeds of a tree, which is literally what it is. And because of that, when doctors are worried that the cancer cells might have spread anywhere else in the body, they give the medicines through blood, because blood reaches every nook and corner and every cell in the body, and try to kill them that way. But the principle is that just attack fast growing cells, because that's what cancer cells are. But there are other cells in the body which also are replicating or dividing rapidly. For example, blood cells, or cells of hair follicles, or cells, lining of the mouth. And that's why people get the side effects. Most of the side effects are temporary, and later get better. Yes, I will answer that question. It does. Pollution will cause cancer. We will get to that. So chemotherapy, and then there is hormone therapy because now we are able to see that, again, I can't go into all the details, but ovary can control breast because of hormones. And you might have heard that when there is breast cancer, ovaries are removed and so on. And in the same way, breast cancer can be controlled using hormones, and so is prostate cancer. Then radiation therapy, I already talked about it. All these therapies have become much more refined. There is technical progress that allows the other cells or other parts of the body not to be affected. But what I want to tell you is something that happened when these mutations were discovered and we understood more about cancer, how well the therapy progressed. So I worked in Novartis, and Novartis has a drug called Gleevec. So about 20 years back, there was a leukemia. It was called chronic myelogenous leukemia, CML. Don't try to remember it. And again, the story is there in my book. So most of the people, like only one in four patients could live up to 5 years after the diagnosis. It wasn't a good disease to have. And even before, like sometimes I think in 1980s or so, few scientists noticed that there was a specific protein that was produced by these cells, the leukemic cells, and they didn't understand what it is. Later, when we knew about DNA and the genes and so on, one doctor came up with the idea that if we block the production of this protein, will that kill the cancer cells? And it was an attractive idea. And to cut the long story short, that's exactly what they did. They found something that will stop the production of this protein. And do you know, today, people can take oral medications and they can live even 20, 25 years after this cancer. I mean, Gleevec is called a magic bullet. It's that amazing. And this is a testament to the fact that if we understand how these genes work and how we can attack them specifically, then the treatment will become much more focused. And truly enough, this therapy is called targeted therapy. So a lot of work is going on to specifically look at the mutations. In scientific knowledge, we call them driver mutations because there are multiple mutations, even for a given cancer. But the one which is mostly responsible for the growth of the cells, here is something about growth of the cells. So most of the mature cells, they do not have the ability to divide. They just do their work. You know, it's like a honeybees. Most of the honeybees are worker bees. There is only queen bee, and she provides the offsprings when needed. Not every bee can replicate. Not every bee can give birth to other bee. What happens in cancer is our cells, which are not supposed to divide, they were just supposed to be doing their work, they regain the ability to divide. And that's when that can happen, that's when called the driver mutations, the mutation that gives them that ability. So anyway, that is the story of Glivec. Now the most advanced is immunotherapy. And in immunotherapy, scientists are trying to get the immune system of our own body and use it to control the cells, control the cancerous process. Difficult concept. Actually, I have got quite a few compliments how easy I have made it in my book. But there are many ways of doing it. You know, sometimes the immune agents like interferon are given into the body. Some cancer cells also prepare a shield around themselves and they hide behind that shield. So now we are able to attack that shield, unmask them, and kill them. So that is there is a drug which works on this principle called pembrolizumab. And some of you may remember in 2015 or 16, our President Carter were diagnosed with metastatic melanoma. Metastatic means his melanoma, his skin cancer had already spread. And normally there would not have been any treatment, but he was treated with this immunotherapy and he is alive even as of today. So again, I'm trying to tell you that there is a lot of progress in the cancer therapy and our understanding. There is vaccine for cervical cancer. Some of you might have given it to your young daughters or sons. So all these advances are based on strong research and, you know, they make me feel very helpful about the future. But the goal is not to find treatments. You know, the goal is really to find ways to prevent cancer. Because I think even when you talk about treatment and so on, any of you who have gone through this, they know that this is not going to be a good experience. People tell me that, okay, so I know so-and-so, and he, you know, he always smoked and he drank and he lived a good life and he never got cancer. And everybody knows somebody like that. And I have an article where I talk about, is it nature or nurture, mother nature or lifestyle? And I have given there a story that we Indians know, which is of four blind people, four blind men and an elephant. Okay. And what happens is, you know that the one holding the tail thinks that elephant is a rope and the one holding leg feels elephant is like a column and so on, you know. So I say all in all, this debate is like the story of the four blind men and the elephant. But what is different here is, or what is similar here is that everyone's answer was correct in their own way, but it was wrong because nobody could see the whole elephant. And that's exactly what is happening in cancer. When people come and say, okay, so how do you explain such and such a thing? I'm very humble and I say, we don't have the full picture. We still don't know what exactly is doing all this. You know, because so much of this process is hidden from us. We do not know about cancer till it is well established. So the minimum size of the cancer lump that is visible is 1 centimeter. And by then, 1 centimeter contains literally millions of cells. So we don't know how that happens, and that is why we have to respect our own body and take prevention measures. Okay, before I go further, I have put here a reminder to myself that you people, all of you, should try to understand how complex drug development process is, but at the same time, read about clinical trials, because clinical trials is something good. It helps patients, and it helps even in other diseases. Clinical trials are extremely useful, because that is the only way we can keep finding cures for our diseases. And in clinical trials, people don't have to feel that they will be abused, that they will be treated like guinea pigs. There is a lot of regulatory framework in place. And basically, patients are at the center of all clinical trials, and their rights are protected. In cancer, as a matter of fact, people get access to still unapproved drugs in clinical trials, and there have been many stories that those drugs have been so good that their lives, I mean, for example, think of those who got in the Gleevec clinical trial. Till it got approved, nobody else could get it, but those who got in the clinical trial were saved, and others who were waiting probably did not have access that quickly. So clinical, I have put myself a note, because I'm assuming many of you will be talking to other people and so on. So please explain to them. I also want to tell you that this is not a boring book. I have tried to make it very interesting, and I have tried to use good language. So Alka and others who have been there for my Marathi presentation, they have heard it, and I hope my English is also equally good. But when I write about breast cancer, I don't start with the cancer. So this is how I start. Women's breasts are literally the stuff of poetry, a favorite subject of writers from all over the world since time immemorial. The emblem of beauty in youth transforms into a symbol of life-sustaining care when a woman becomes a mother. In this way, breasts are a unique creation of nature. They are both the epitome of romantic love and of maternal nurturing. And I wanted to do it this way because I don't want this to be a book that all people are already stressed. Cancer is not a topic that anybody is going to jump onto to read. And I wanted to make it much more palatable, much more enjoyable. So, okay, so we have come up to here. Just few minutes about what happens to patients and their families and how they should deal with it before I go to prevention. So I feel that the most important thing for patients and is not to feel shame, not to feel sad. Try to use all their resources, their friends, their family, and try to face it, because as I have been giving you examples, there are many treatments available. But all this comes from the positive attitude of the patient. And we see that more in the Western world compared to India. And here I say something. Many cancer patients say the disease taught them to value life. They stopped worrying about how much time they had left and instead became motivated to use that time wisely. While reading a book aloud to a patient in a hospital room, or filling out some filling out some tiresome form for them, or sometimes wiping someone else's tears and simply keeping them company, volunteers who themselves were cancer patients are not only helping others, but gaining something for themselves too. It is in these moments that they realize that everything is not yet over, that their companionship and support are still valuable, that their existence still matters. People who find value and opportunity in adversity make their lives worthwhile, and truly overcome the challenge of cancer. So this is the message I want for people to read and to give others. Now, there is a chapter about can cancer be cured by miracles? And I have really taken a very strong stance here, because what I feel that when something occurs that seems beyond human understanding, it is not only helpful but necessary to try our best to understand how it could have happened, and never to blindly accept that there is no possible rational explanation. The miracles that cure cancer should be examined with the same scrutiny. And actually, this is exactly what happened with immunotherapy. Scientists and people have known for some time that patients who got very high fever, some bad infections, were sometimes miraculously cured, but they didn't know why. And with the scientific curiosity, when they started looking at this and started examining these miracles further, today we have immunotherapy. So do not believe in miracles, for one reason, because I have never seen proof of miracles. But secondly, when you do that, you are wasting very valuable time. Because in cancer, the earlier you treat that disease before it has spread too much, the better is the chance of curing it or managing it well. Okay, last thing. So cancer deaths have actually come down, and the reason is, people are smoking less, people are more aware of the symptoms, and people are able to go to doctor and get better treatment. There is a chapter, I have a question in which, as I said, I have answers to many, many questions. Some questions make you feel bad. There was a question saying, my wife recovered from cancer. She's okay, she doesn't have cancer anymore. Can my children eat the food that she cooks? And I appeal to people that please try to help these people to get back into society, get back to their life. So that brings me to my most favorite part, that I have some stories here. Because when I was working in Tata Hospital, I was quite a young girl. And as I said in the beginning, that these days made a strong impact on me. There is a story of a maid, Bai. She worked in many homes. She had 3 children. Husband had died of TB, and she had an old mother who got breast cancer. I want you to read that story because most people like it a lot, called Gold Necklace. There is a story about my friend from Indianapolis, where I lived for quite a few years. And he died in his 50s, and he had esophageal cancer. This very, very good person taught me that who are we? And he says, perhaps these hard-earned qualities of goodness, kindness, these form our real self, and after we are gone, they linger, the footprints of our existence. So these are good stories. There are also stories of 2 elderly women. One was my own aunt, my Maushi, and the other one I knew. And one had lost leg below knee, and the other one had lost one eye due to cancer. And you can imagine these women would have been 100 today. So they belong to traditional society, had traditional roles. My Maushi, my auntie, she wore 9-yard sari. And yet, in spite of these huge setbacks due to cancer, I have never seen them bitter. I have never seen them complaining. They just stood tall, as I should say, and they faced life with love and affection and doing their duties. And that can happen too. So these are the stories I have included for all of you to read. And I hope you will read them and then give me your feedback. Now, the last thing, which is, I think I kind of touched upon it, and I want to say that again before I conclude this lecture. What I want to say is, we have a control on our life. And especially with cancer, people are now saying, scientists, not people, scientists are now saying at least 50, but maybe as much as 75% cancers can be prevented. Now, some of the simple things for that is to avoid the carcinogens, the known carcinogens. Now, people sometimes say, we don't know everything. No, we don't. And that's not an excuse. And I think, again, the last time many people liked it in my Marathi presentation when I said that when there is a bad accident, people who are wearing seatbelt may also perish. But does that negate the fact that seatbelts have saved many, many, many lives? Will you still not wear it? It's the same thing. Trust what we know, act on what we know. Even if something happens, then you don't have to blame yourself that it's because of me. That is because it's going to take a long time. Just because it takes long time for cancer to develop. That's why the cure is not going to happen quickly. Right? I mean, first of all, there is not going to be one cure for cancer because there are at least 100 types of cancer. I think what we can do is do the right things and hope that we remain healthy. And that doesn't mean that people should never eat nicely, or people should never have a glass of wine, or people should never do fun things and so on. You know, it doesn't mean that at all. Everybody wants to live, and the living means that you enjoy it. But think about it this way. If from the age of 20 or 25, we just put on ½ pound per year, which for first 10 years may not be known. But by the time you are 60, how much weight one would have put on? So it's like something that you have to be aware and think about almost on a regular basis. And you have to have that desire to live a good life, to remain active, and to avoid things that you definitely know are going to cause cancer. And I think that will help a lot, not only for yourself, but I also feel that we owe it to the next generation. We need to give this message to the next generation. I mean, I think we are here, for Shri Yoga, and yoga teaches us about bandhan. It teaches us about nigraha, and all these things should be part of our life. Again, that doesn't mean don't enjoy life, but one can easily do that. And I appeal to everybody that in spite of all the advances, it's still a difficult disease, and prevention is going to be the best thing that we can do about cancer. So I'm just going to read 2 lines, and then I will start answering your questions. So all I want to say in conclusion is we all benefit from resolving to live a better life. A healthy, addiction-free lifestyle allows us to have physical strength, while our hard work, goals, commitment, this raises us to new mental and spiritual heights. If a person encounters a crisis like cancer, my hope is that they will not waste time in fear or denial, but treat it without becoming defeated. With optimism and courage, try your best to overcome all difficulties. And in the end, no matter what happens, don't give up your dignity and humanity. All that matters really is not how long we existed, but how long we lived, how well we lived. So thank you for listening. Namaste.
Thank you very much. It was a wonderful presentation. And again, if you have any questions, there are some questions in the chat box if you want to take a look at it, or you can ask the questions directly. Suggest you just go through the questions in the chat box and then.
Okay. Can environmental pollution cause cancer? Yes. And so does secondhand smoke. So any people who are in a company of a strong smoker, or who work or go to bars, this risk is very much there. What is the percentage of any cancer between alcoholic and non-alcoholic population? I don't think I have this, but I do have a definition of what is, who is asking this question? Govind Modi. So Modi ji, there is a answer to it, what CDC says, not what Sulu says. What is moderate drinking and at what level it becomes dangerous. So if you go to, I have a question section, it very clearly, I'm not going to open it and read it for you right now. Since I don't drink, I will have to read it. I don't know. Link to Sulutai's book. Okay, Alka, thank you very much for that. How do you explain non-alcoholic, non-smokers, vegetarians, even healthy? That's perfectly. So I have already answered this question. Did you get the answer or do you want me to say it again?
I'll just make a comment.
Okay.
What happens is the science always brings out we should not do this. But science never tells us that the people who haven't done any of these things, why they become sick, why they get cancer, why they die of cancer. And uh, I do not know whether there are comparative studies. I'm a scientist, by the way. I'm a biomedical scientist. And in India, I work for NIV, National Institute of Virology, before coming here. So I have a little bit scientific background. So my background always tells me why it is that there are so many non-scientific things and they are not considered and we have no answers and we don't go into that comparison. Like I just ask you the basic question that there are healthy people, like very thin, vegetarians, living very exercising, living very healthy, life, not touch smoking, not touch alcohol, but still they get cancer of esophagus or anything like, or liver or anything. So what is the answer? I mean, you can say genetic probably, okay? And that question is coming up. So that's why I asked you that question, that what is the, we don't have that scientific evidence, that there is nobody calculates that percentage, that what happened to this population, healthy population, and how many people of that healthy population have cancer.
Govindji, we do have comparisons. We do have numbers.
Okay.
Like lung
Okay.
cancer. What you say is absolutely right. I'm not denying it at all. People who have done nothing wrong get cancer, and it's very frustrating and it makes everybody very angry. I completely agree with you. There is a numbers, and if you want, I can find out and send it to you because I don't like to quote unless I confirm. But there are numbers. What percentage of people get lung cancer when they have never smoked? Okay. So these numbers do get collected. It's not like they don't get collected. But what we don't know today is why do they get it? Is there some germline mutation that we still haven't found? And these things are happening continuously. I had a reason to go to Memorial Sloan Kettering Cancer Center for some work. And I was very impressed by the chief of surgery for gastric cancer. So I went online to look for what she does. And there I found that there exists a gene for gastric cancer, which is so powerful that people who now know that they have this gene, they voluntarily remove the entire stomach. So basically, they connect their use of end of their esophagus directly to intestine. And I couldn't imagine this very extensive surgery. And I asked her when I met her next, I said, do people really do this? And she says, yes, because the chances of cancer are so high that they don't want to take that risk. And she says, one patient is right now sitting in my waiting room. Why I'm telling you this story, Govindji, is I have worked on gastric cancer 10 years back when this gene wasn't there. I had no idea about this gene. So this is still work in progress. If you are a scientist, so go back and look for an article that came about 3 or 4 weeks back where it says that even though we know the entire genome, we only know about 20% of genes, what they do. We do not know about the rest 80%. So this will tell you the extent of our scientific ignorance. And I'm not making any excuses for that because this is still so new. When I started working in 1980s, the mutation theory was not even established. In my own lifetime, I'm seeing these changes. So when that is happening, my question to people is this, Govindji, is are you going to make that excuse and play what they call the Russian roulette and smoke and drink and take the risk? That's all I'm asking. I'm not making excuses. I mean, I truly feel bad for those who get it for no reason. Absolutely horrible. But that is not the reason for us to avoid our own responsibility. Isn't that right?
Yeah, that's correct. What I'm saying is, again, like, I agree on all this, whatever is scientific evidence until now. But the more we discover, and as we are discovering, there is so much we do not know. And I feel that there must be more genetic than these. These are, of course, causative, reasons for that. But like breast cancer, there are genes involved. And, nothing was known earlier. But as we progress in science, we discover that, okay, these guys have, or these people are born with defective genes and they are expressed in them. So even though they are very healthy and they live a healthy lifestyle, their chances of getting cancer is
I
more than
agree.
other.
We just have to leave that question there.
Right. So
No,
that's what I'm saying. Nothing
but
like,
no,
I'm not against,
no,
that we should be doing this, and so yeah.
absolutely.
Yeah. I have one more question down. If you scroll down, we'll
Yeah.
talk about
Can
that
I
also.
answer the one in between from
Yeah, yeah,
Ramkrishna?
sure.
Okay. So is there a pathology test which can detect any cancer in the body? In many cases, we detect cancer was detected in very late stage. So the only two tests, reliable tests we have currently is mammogram and colonoscopy. What happens is cancer cells do produce few things, secretions, also some cells from the cancer escape. Not escape is not the correct word, but they just become part of the bloodstream. They are called circulating tumor factors or circulating tumor cells. And just 2 days back again, I think it was probably presented at ASCO in the last week or today, that they are trying to figure out if these tests can be used effectively as the physical examination every year to see if there is cancer anywhere in the body. Now, when I'm saying this, we have to be careful because you can imagine that positive findings, if they're positive, are very helpful. But what about false positives? False positive can cause a lot of harm. So the writer himself has said of this project that it is still not something that can be used, but there are efforts underway that if we can do a simple blood test or look at, look at some general X-ray or something and try to find out if there is any cancer growing anywhere in the body in the early stage. But meanwhile, currently there is nothing like that. In addition to alcohol, any other things to avoid? So tobacco, of course, and alcohol. In terms of eating something or ingesting something, there is no other strong carcinogen. But what to avoid is for fair people to avoid sitting in the sun, getting tanning, because that has been very strongly associated with melanoma, which is a very bad skin cancer. There are certain chemicals, and if you are working in an industry where such chemicals are used, like for example, I mentioned asbestos, and asbestos mining was once upon a time very common, and very large number of people died because of a bad lung cancer called mesothelioma. And some of these patients are still around because, as I told you, that cancer sometimes takes 20 years to develop. So I think radon is also considered carcinogenic. So that's why we do radon tests. But these are the main things that I can just tell you, from my memory that one has to avoid. But other things to avoid is red meat, processed meat in large amount. I'm not saying like just touching it. It's not poison, but not to use it, not to eat it regularly. Similarly, food that is going to give obesity, I think it's good to avoid that kind of food. So, Govindji, you are asking me the same question in different way. Why many alcoholic smokers don't ever get it? And this is the argument that I keep hearing, and I really do not know what to tell these people. Again, it's their choice. If this is what they want to believe, and because of that they feel, okay, I will be one of them. It's like the four blind men and the elephant, you know. So if they think that, okay, this is what I'm going to do because so and so drank and smoked and never got cancer, so I hope I'm equally lucky and I never get cancer. That's the choice everybody has to make, and I do hope you don't make that choice. So
my last question there is, if you can spend few minutes, about
yeah.
4 or 5 minutes on that last one, that's very important.
So what is the current success rate of immunotherapy? Is that what you're asking
No,
me?
no, no. My question is, spend a few minutes talking about the effect of genetic immunity and inheritance of good genes, or we always call, oh, his father was he probably carried or she carried a good gene. So please talk, because it's a genetic disease mainly. That's why I want you to spend some
Oh,
minutes
it's
on that.
not mainly a genetic disease.
I
That
mean, not sorry,
no,
not
that's
but
exactly I'm
sorry,
trying
sorry.
to say
Yeah.
that
No,
it
okay,
is mainly not a genetic disease. Now, why
okay,
some people
okay.
are able to? So I will tell you something, and I have only 1 hour, so I have a limit to how much I can say.
No, just about 5 minutes.
No, so listen to me. 3 years back, 4 years back, before pandemic, I was at a European meeting. And there the person presenting said that the next wave of liver cancer will happen in India. And I thought he's talking about alcohol. And he wasn't talking about alcohol. He was actually talking about the non-alcoholic fatty liver disease. Okay. We have, is Ujwala somewhere here, or if she has left, I don't know. She is a good writer. She writes in Marathi. She's currently writing in Lok Satta, and she wrote a wonderful article about how the fat gets stored in our liver, how our fat makes cholesterol and makes fat. And when that happens, when that kind of fatty liver happens, that's going to lead to liver cancer. Okay, the genes are not going to be able to do anything about it, because our genes have taught us that if we take 20 milligram of fat, then the liver will make 800 milligram, because in the past, the genes knew that we never had enough fat. You know, it took a long time to catch a fatty animal and eat it. So mostly we were eating vegetables or something else which didn't give us enough cholesterol, except some milk. So our genes don't always help us. Our genes can actually put us in trouble if what that particular scientist was saying comes true. And if any of you ever do, for any reason, MRI of your abdomen or of your liver, you will find out that all of us, as we age, we all begin to have fatty liver. And if we eat wrong, the genes are not, actually the genes are helping us make this fatty liver. So this is a long answer to your question, but what I'm telling you, what are good genes? I don't know what are good genes. You know, a good gene should be able to find the mutated gene and kill it, because mutations will happen. Each cigarette causes 3 mutations in the body. And if we keep doing it again and again and again, every day, how do you expect genes are going to protect us? I don't have answer for that, Govindji.
He probably made that statement about liver cancer in India because the hepatitis viruses as well as diabetes, the percentage of both of these are quite high in India, and that creates fatty spleen again. So maybe because of that, he might. That's just my thought. Okay.
Could be, could be.
Yeah.
We have 906. Any other question that I have missed, guys?
Your friend Ujwala is still here, I think. He wants to say something about her book, her articles.
What did you, Did I?
Sulutai, I have a question if somebody else is not in the line.
Yeah, of course. Go ahead.
Yeah, so this is just the most recent one. Is there any relationship seen in between the COVID patients after recovery and developing cancer cells or any of those? Is there any relationship found at all?
So it is possible. I'm not saying it is impossible. It is mRNA. We do not know how it will affect, but as I have been explaining, that for cell to have the mutation and for the cell to form a clone, as I explained, like that cells is able to grow and form a clone, is going to take at least few years before we start looking at it, right? So I don't know as of today, because what other alternative do we have? Tell me. We just cannot say we won't take the vaccine, right? I mean, the vaccine has had so many, forget about cancer, but the vaccine has had many bad effects. My own daughter has developed severe allergy. She gets hives, she gets rashes. I know people who have cardiac problems because of vaccine. So vaccine has caused a lot of side effects. That's a fact. As far as cancer is concerned, we will have to wait and see.
Thank you, because this question usually gets asked when people come for the vaccinations.
Yeah, but just tell them that right now, take the vaccine. And, again, I am a big believer in science. I think as we keep, because somebody somewhere is collecting and analyzing all this data. And if they see anything like that, at least what they will be able to do is give us a red flag and alarm, saying that, okay, guys, anybody who has taken this vaccine needs to be checked for something like this. But think about it, Alka, like one of the biggest radiation events in the entire history of mankind was the dropping of atom bomb, correct?
Yep, that's true.
And how long will it take to see that this bombing caused a lot of leukemias and so on?
Years, yeah.
Yeah, at least 10 years, right?
Yep.
So that's what I'm trying to tell you, that when somebody says that to you, you say, hey, what is more important is you protect yourself right now, because getting COVID is much more acute problem, correct?
That's true.
But then I also heard, I was talking to one doctor and she says, I don't know what to say, Sulu, these people, they have taken all four shots and they want more.
That's true. That's true. I mean, sometimes you are seeing fifth, sixth. They're coming after every 2 months to get their shots.
And she says, more is not merrier. You are protected, you are good. You don't need to take any more. But that happens too. So again, see, there has to be a little bit of common sense. Don't you think so?
Yeah, that's true.
Okay. I mean, everything we do, everything we introduce into our body, including even the medication. So I have a question part. I also have a question about medications, because people very rightly ask me, they said, what about this so many medications that we are taking for so long? Will that cause cancer? And again, my answer is same. Many of the medications like for hypertension and diabetes have been used for a long time now. Even statins have been used for a long time. And if there was any association with cancer, then we would see it. See, we also have to remember one thing, that cancer is mostly a disease of older age, middle to older age. And so when people were dying in their 50s and 60s, we do not know how many of them had cancer in their body, and even before it could express, they were dead due to some other reason, right?
Yeah.
We are seeing more and more cancers now because we are also living longer.
It is getting detected earlier also sometimes because of the prevention purposes, or rather the prevention, what awareness is actually rising in some, especially the younger generations as well.
It is, but see, compared to the older times, the type of cancers that we see today are different because our lifestyles have changed, correct?
That's true. Yeah, that's true.
So that is one big difference. Like, for example, how many people, millions and millions of people, they expect by 2050, there will be 80 million people in the developing world with lung cancer. 88 million. Huge, huge number. Okay. But that cancer didn't exist in the older times. Nobody was smoking, right?
Yeah.
So except for what Govindji has been saying, the spontaneous lung cancers that happen with people who had no wrong habits, that's all that probably existed, which I don't think was much.
Yeah.
So we are
Niru,
having...
you have a question?
Yes. Namaste, Sulochana ji. I am Niru Amin, and wonderful presentation. So many things I was not aware about, I learned today, and definitely I'm going to read your book. So I am very much into the alternative therapy. So in your idea, or I know you are a scientist, I'm also a scientist, but we do everything based on science. So is there any effective alternative medicines or alternative therapy for cancer, not the aggressive cancers, but like, say, suppose the early stages and like that? No.
There is no treatment. What I tell people is use yoga, use meditation, use techniques or tools like this, because they will support you, make you feel positive. And research has shown again and again that when the patient is in a positive frame of mind, the treatments work better.
Oh, okay.
Okay. So I always tell people that do all these things. They are very helpful. Unfortunately, we do not have a single, how should I say, proof or evidence that something was systematically used for whatever stage of cancer and patient felt better. And that's why when you read my book, you look at how much is expected to get approval for any drug in the therapy that we use.
Yeah.
Huge amount of burden, and we first have to start with cells and then animals and go to people and go from smaller groups to bigger groups and keep showing again and again that it works. Now, please tell me, do you know of anybody doing that kind of concerted effort in alternative therapy?
No, but in India, there are some ashrams and like that. Sometimes they claim that they have prevented this cancer or they have cured this cancer or something like that. So just my curiosity.
No, I know. And I hear these things too. And, if that was true and if they could prove it, we will close all the cancer hospitals, right?
Right.
That's so much better therapy. Why go through this very aggressive therapy with all these very difficult side effects and all that? Because, and again, in my article about can cancer be cured by miracles, I talk about it, and I say that, did anybody really know that this person had cancer? Who has seen the pathology report? I give an example of one person who had this happened about 35 years back, and he was a doctor and he couldn't breathe. So he got X-ray and he saw growth in his lungs and he thought he has lung cancer. And of course, 35 years back, there was not much one could do. Even today, it's a difficult cancer to treat. But because he had a 1-year-old boy and didn't want to die, he decided to take the chemotherapy and all that. It so happened that that growth was not really that of lung cancer. It was some different kind of growth.
Oh, okay.
Okay. And so it responded well to chemotherapy. Not only the doctor is alive today, his son also has become a doctor. What I'm trying to explain here is we don't always know all the circumstances correctly. People give us some wrong information. That doesn't happen in controlled clinical trials.
Right.
We have so many steps in place to make sure all information is correct and precise, right?
Right.
And that is, I'm not saying alternative therapy may never have something, but show us, right?
Yeah.
till then, what do you do? If you go for alternative therapy, you are losing precious time. Forget about the money part, but aren't you losing precious time in taking whatever treatment you could get here?
Right.
So only one place where I would say people could do what they want, and if that too I say with caution, is sometimes, I mean, it will be wrong of me not even to talk about that sometimes in spite of doing everything, there's yet nothing left to do, right? That's what happens in cancer. And when that happens, I always hope and pray that that person will get all the help to live the last days, last part of his life in dignity and in a pain-free environment. Because that is the time when doctors say, we really can't do anything, but there could still be pain, there could be still some expectations, something. So in Western world, they use palliative care.
Right.
And in our parts of the world, maybe somebody could go to an ashram, but even there, the person will require some medical help, not to get better, but to control symptoms and pain.
Yes. Okay.
Right?
Right.
Yes. Okay. So I hope,
One more question, one more last question. Is it this immunotherapy is for all the cancers, or this is certain type of cancer immunotherapy is there?
So what happens again in our kind of medicine, Western medicine, we doctors cannot use something unless it is proven, right? So
Right.
immunotherapy has been proven, and there are many types of immunotherapy. And, and I'm going to combine it with the question Govindji asking, what do you think about the future of cancer therapy? I think it's quite good. So there is still some time, so those of you who want to listen can listen. But there is something called CAR-T therapy, which is the most advanced.
Yeah.
What do they do in CAR-T therapy? 10 years back, this started. That take the blood cells from the patient's body. The immune cells are called T as in tiger, T cells, expose them to the cancer cells and teach them, literally train them to attack the cancer cells.
Right.
Put them back in the patient's body through infusion. Okay.
Right.
And when this experiment was done, it was done at the Children's Hospital in Pennsylvania. When this experiment was done, the patient got such severe, she was a young girl, 6 or 7 year old, I think, such a severe reaction that she almost died. And it's a very interesting story. If some of you want, it is now on internet. She survived and got completely cured. And she is now 18 years old. So recently there was a big celebration about 10 years past her therapy and how she survived. And this CAR-T therapy is now getting used for some of these leukemias, and they are trying it for other cancers. But I do know that recently somebody I knew, she had a 4-year-old granddaughter and who had brain cancer, unfortunately. But it didn't work for that particular girl. That little girl died. So what I'm trying to tell you is immunotherapy is getting used for a lot of cancers, but only those where it has been approved. For others, there could be clinical trials. And somebody can get into the clinical trial to get treated, but that's not guarantee of success.
Yeah. Thank you very much. Yeah, for nicely explaining.
Yeah, but it is also answers Govindji's question is, yes, I'm very hopeful for the future, because the more we understand how the genes work, which genes are responsible for causing cancer, what makes the genes get triggered, all these things. And then also, as we have been talking about on the other side, which is early detection using non-invasive methods, where we can look at the blood work and circulating factors or tumor cells and so on. The more we are able to do that, see, the ultimate goal is that we should be able to fight cancer in such a way that it becomes a manageable disease. And that's what Gleevec did. That's why I told you the story of Gleevec. That patients who had that leukemia are now taking oral medication, just as I take oral medication for my high blood pressure. And we are able to live a nearly normal life.
Right.
And that's the whole idea. Cancer is never going to go away because they are our own cells. But make it into such a disease where we are able to control and manage it using simple medications, so we are not so deadly scared of them. Does that make sense, Govindji?
Yeah, I just wrote another one. I think we should take a one couple of minutes on that because I don't know. Is
So
there, you think that stem cells will?
it is already getting used in the transfusions
Oh,
in
okay. I didn't know that.
breast
Okay.
cancer. And so, yeah, it is getting used.
Okay.
I mean,
Okay.
actually, stem cells have to come from somebody else because the stem cells in this particular person, depending on what the cancer is, because stem cells have the ability to reproduce,
Right.
right? So you cannot use stem cells everywhere, right? But yes, it already has a role in certain cancers.
Okay.
Of course.
Because we don't hear very commonly, like for some other diseases, they use that, like not really frequently, but once in a while. But for cancer, I haven't seen too many publications on that.
Mm. Yeah, it's not the active area of research right now,
Right.
and I don't want to get into the reasons, but it is not an active
Okay.
area.
Okay.
But it has been used.
Okay. Yeah, but your presentation was great. Thank you very much. Very, very scientific and very, like up to the like common man could understand everything. Okay.
That is the whole idea. So
Right.
look, guys, I'm a scientist. I'm not a salesperson. I'm not a marketing person. Any of you think you have a group, you know people, you can get few people together. I do not mind coming and talking. I'm also trying to make a website because I had no clue how to. I just wrote a book. Don't know how to take it to people. But if you go to Amazon, so one person right now, the #1 review is from Dr. Alan Hatfield, and Alan Hatfield was in charge of Gleevec. And I was very surprised that he found my book, read it, and wrote that review. I was extremely honored that he did that. So people are, but word of mouth is going to have its own limitation. So please help me in this because this is where you are really helping people, and you don't have to take my name. This is not about me. This is about cancer, and this is about cancer prevention more than anything else.
Thank you, Sulu. Again, are there any other questions? Otherwise, we can close it. Questions or comments?
Thank you. Namaste, everybody.